We're back here on our program, Jones and Company, and we're enjoying this conversation with Dr. Gilbert Morris today as we talk about our Bahamas, the prospects for growth and development in our country. Growth is one thing, and development is another.
Growth is the result of investment, proper investment. I mean, it could come from lots of different things, unintended consequences and things like that. But as Leon Williams always say, you can't manage what you don't measure. Mm-hmm. And so even though growth happens incidentally, you want to be able to direct and be able to contribute, measure and control how you invest towards growth. And it's almost never ending. I mean, if you look at Walmart and you get a sense of how Walmart functions, they plow their money right back in to upgrade their technology, expand, better trucks, they're doing research with FedEx on the proper trucks, the best tires, the best navigation systems, how to shorten the amount of time for deliveries and those sorts of things. Constantly. We have a kind of finished task mentality. So we'll do something, you say, okay, that's done. Yep. You don't have to think about that no more. You buy a car, you say, okay, I got the car now, I own it. You don't think, okay, every 3 months I got to take it in for servicing. I got to rebalance the tires. We don't think in those terms. And it's very difficult to think in those terms when you don't have manufacturing in your country, because manufacturing actually imposes that kind of discipline. We have to develop a discipline where we are constantly learning, relearning, unlearning, and relearning everything that we know. And that's the difference between thinkers and policy advisors. Policy advisors have a vested interest in their policy being taken up because that's how they get paid.
Let's talk about the development of our human resources.
Right.
I mentioned growth is one thing and
right.
development is another.
Right.
And, I believe that we have in our country what seems to me to be intellectual lethargy.
Yes.
Dr. Morris, you go in many of the heartland communities
right.
of our country,
right.
and you see social deterioration.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the effect of an education system that's really not geared towards development. I mentioned Singapore earlier. Again, I'm not trying to say we should be Singapore. I'm saying they did intangibles which we were doing before them. Mm-hmm. Because we were the education society from 1955 to 1973, mm-hmm. right? There was competition on the ground. You Nassau fellows were all, I went to SAC, and this one went to QC, and this one went to GHS, and they tried to kill each other, and everybody had nicknames, and everybody had, and people were doing outstanding things, and so on. And we were constantly hearing in Freeport when I was a little boy, this one's, the big school was St. John's in Minnesota. Everyone would, you'd hear somebody gone there.
Fellows from SAC went to St. John's.
That's right, absolutely. And so that energy that was there. And then you had Ms. Dean, who was Director of Education, who then worked to develop the after-school program, the night school program. And you remember that night school program, lots of accountants, lawyers, all those sorts of people. We were the education nation. Mm-hmm. When my cousin Valeria Burrows, Nee Forbes, when she got accepted to government high school, our whole the whole family met on Sundays for dinner. That whole Sunday dinner was about her. Mm-hmm. Because education was celebrated. Mm-hmm. We have lost that energy. And we've lost the energy of endless investment without looking for an immediate return. That return may come later. People speak of the Chinese and say one of the reasons that society is so outstanding is because they invest without the need to see the return in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. Well, when you invest in children, that's what you're doing. You're not investing in them for your enjoyment. You're not raising them for your enjoyment. Mm-hmm. That's why it's difficult to be a parent, because you feel the emotional connection to them, but you're actually preparing them for when they love somebody and they have to be in a relationship when you're gone, that they have the right judgment and so on. Well, it's the same for the country. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that we have, I see this in the credit culture in the Bahamas, where if you can get a loan, it's so structured. It's like a construction loan, right? Draw down, get an invoice. Draw down. it's like we don't want people to fail. Yet we are surrounded by numerous, too many failures to mention. We have to create some sort of credit structure where young people can fail, where they can go. Look at the dot-com boom in the United States. Complete bust. But the people running the corporations today are those people who took the chances, in those places. Look at another thing. When you teach in the United States, one of the things you notice is the progression of your students. The first ones that come in the first year, they work at Burger King and McDonald's. What do they learn? Budgeting, scheduling, cleaning, keeping the facilities, maintenance, and so on. And they learn something very crucial: process production. How to do things in a process. This has a certain amount of time, that has a certain amount of time, and you have no excuses. You can't say I didn't feel like it, or it didn't come, or my auntie dead, the same auntie who died 5 times in a row. You can't, there's no chance of that. It's a Toyota model. It's a process assembly line system. You learn that. The second year, they work at Subway or they work at Walmart. The third year, they work in a law firm. By the fourth year, they've been working, on something close to their career, doing charitable work, internships, these kinds of things. So by the time they graduate, this person, they can run a small retail shop on their own because they got all that training at McDonald's and so on. Where is our process that we put our young people through, where there's a ritual of success that they keep learning every day? We don't have a broad national system for that.
Because we don't really understand what education is for.
That's right, absolutely.
What it's for. And I believe that a whole lot of people believe, well, I'll send my child to school and they will get a couple of BJCs or some BGCSEs. And, and they will determine where they want to go. But they're not educating their children for life.
Not for life,
and educating their children to play a role in the development of the society.
That's right. It's very, very important. Listen, in Japan, for instance, and you've seen some of the videos on YouTube, but I lived in Osaka, and I can tell you, in Japanese schools, everyone wears uniforms. That's number one. You have to be deferential to your teachers. It's number two. You can't, no attitude to the teacher. No mobile phones, which if I were, I would never be, but if I were Minister of Education, that would be more like one of my number one bans. No mobile phones in the school. No parents can come to the school and agitate with a teacher. There's a structure for that, and that structure is in place within the authority system of the school. And Japanese schools have no janitors. The children keep their environment clean. Every child, no matter what rank of life you're in. So that creates cohesion in Japanese society. Let's look at another example of that same thing. In Switzerland, I was advisor to Pierre Darrier when he was chairman of the Swiss Private Bankers Association. So here's a man, 430 years of banking history, probably $300, $400 billion under management, banks all over the world. And he had to go 2 weeks a year back to the barracks, and his sergeant from whom he had to take orders was a bus driver or a tram driver, right? So what does that do? It creates an equalitarian spirit in the society where there's something that everybody believes we all have to push and pull in the same direction. But it also means that Swiss society is cohesive in the sense that if every 18-year-old has to go in the military for 2 years, then they learn the same songs, the same history, the same set of basic societal rules and everything like that. Whether you're an immigrant or whatever it is, everybody learns the same thing. And by merit, you are promoted from stage to stage. And then when you leave, every 2 weeks you have to return until 65, I believe. This creates cohesion in the society, and now it's what sociologists call or economists call an Overton window. Meaning that you have the majority or a large portion of the larger portion of the society that generally believes in the same 4, 5, 6 essential principles that drive that society.
Dr. Morris, I've been complaining in recent times about the level of indiscipline in the
Right.
society.
Yes, yes.
And this level of indiscipline is seen not only among young people,
Right.
but people from every
Yes, absolutely,
age
yes.
bracket in the society. Whether you are talking about state authority,
That's right.
you see indiscipline.
Right.
When you look at how we maintain our
Right.
public buildings,
Right.
the level of efficiency
Right.
of people who are running our
Right.
country,
Right.
people are complaining about government officials not returning calls or
Right.
not acknowledging letters
Right.
and
Right.
all of these type
Right.
things.
Right.
And in order for us, our society to grow and develop as it ought,
Right.
we have to look at the level of discipline,
That's
how
right.
we discipline
Absolutely.
ourselves.
Absolutely.
What do you say to that?
I say absolutely, and what you're talking about is having an interstitial psychology. And what is that? If you touch this, it has an effect over there. Touch that, it has an effect over there. We don't have that sense that what we do. So you see people driving in Mercedes-Benz, and then you see Kentucky Fried Chicken boxes flying out the window, right? So they have a status desire that makes them choose that brand, but they don't have a living culture that reinforces that status desire.
Something within.
Yes, absolutely. And that is a very, very critical situation for a society to be in. In fact, in Volume 4 of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Gibbon says that when a people have been exposed to a certain level of sophistication, they absorb it either for their own private identity or as a social code. We haven't absorbed it as a social code, so it hasn't instilled in us discipline. Because, I mean, my father would say, if you're going to drive a BMW, and you understand what the engineering that went into that car, the discipline and all that sort of stuff that went into that car, I should be able to determine something about you extended from your choice of that vehicle, because you're choosing, if you're not just choosing the brand, you're choosing reliability, engineering, mathematical prowess, all these sorts of things that went into it. But those things never occur to us. And that has to happen in the earliest stages of the school. Mm-hmm. That's what Finland is doing. That's what Estonia is doing. Do you believe Bangladesh came third in the global education PISA rankings in 2000? Bangladesh, now, if you're Bangladeshi, I'm not abusing you. I'm just saying it was seen as the sweatshop of the world.
Yes.
Right? 5 years ago, they got together with Bangladeshi scholars from all, because when people leave Bangladesh, they end up teaching at big universities around the world and doing all sorts of amazing things. And they have a great deal of, like our Indian friends, quantitative talent. Well, if you look at what Bangladesh did, they developed their research institute. They said, we want to get to the top of the education chain. Because in transitioning from one type of society to the other, we have to develop discipline and human resources capacity. That actually was the argument of Sir Arthur Lewis in his, the Caribbean St. Lucian economist, Nobel Prize laureate. And so until we, the Bahamas, these things are within our grasp, is what I'm saying. And if the lowest, Bahamian on the lowest level of the economic totem pole were 10% better off, the richest Bahamian would be 100% richer. Because that 10% would be spent with them.
Yes.
Do you see my point?
Yes.
And so we should be thinking in these ways. I headed a conference which the deputy premier of Turks and Caicos called, and he asked me to head it on immigration. And when I got there, they were talking about we have to get the radar up and running, and we have, I was like, radar? Are you serious? So we were talking, and they were saying, well, what should we do? I said, well, you should call Elon Musk and ask for a condominium on one of his satellites, or call Canada and ask for a condominium on one of their satellites, or ask Norway, or ask, you understand me? And you're talking about drones. You build a drone system that once the satellite identifies, then the drone goes there, and then your boats follow, right? Now, that's not my bailiwick. I learned, George Mason is right next to the Pentagon, the Warfighting Lab, the FBI, the NSA, ANSA, METER, all these people who listen on all your phone calls.
Yes.
So every day you're surrounded by these people who are actually doing these things in the world.
Yeah.
And you learn from them that systems development and management, research and analysis, data analysis, the map, systems building, design and building and deployment and management, with feedback loops that create accountability measures, produce discipline. It doesn't happen on its own.
And finally, let me ask you, we are in a pandemic.
Right.
We've been in it for over 2 years now.
Right.
And is it, well, we have two administrations that have been dealing with it.
Right.
Is it time for us to take into account what is happening with COVID-19 and reset the Bahamas?
Yes, and I think they're ambling. We talked about young people before and talk about generations passing down. We actually have an interesting situation. We have a seasoned, knowledgeable prime minister. We have a young deputy prime minister, and we have a young leader of the opposition. So this should be a real time of renaissance for the Bahamas. The mistake I think most of the world has made, and I've made it my business to study this very closely, is they treat the pandemic as if it's a medical problem, public health problem. It's not a public health problem. It's a logistics and demographic problem. You need people who are skilled in logistics and demographics to understand how this disease operates. That's number one. Number two, you cannot do anything, and I had this discussion for several hours with Peter Blair on Thursday. You cannot do anything without universal free testing and randomized testing. Both of these, one is a safety proposition. Well, there are three things. One is a safety proposition. One is a proposition for data formation and analysis so that you can make decisions at the speed of the disease. Because if people are walking in and saying, I think I have COVID, and they're just walking in and saying, I think I have COVID, then you do a dashboard on that. That's a useless dashboard because you don't really know the situation. Because that person the disease may have been incubating in them for the incubation period. They may have been infecting other people. Then there may be super spreaders out there that you don't know about because the super spreader is also asymptomatic. So we're talking now not about public health, we're talking about demographics, right? And that means you need a mechanism, something that allows you to make decisions at the speed of the disease. When you test, so people say, well, the antigen test is not that accurate and so on. Okay, then you have to get 4 of them in over the 2-week cycle. So 8 weeks, you get 4 tests. Why? Because what you're going to do is create a data set. So you have the big flat screen, you have the whole map of the country, and every time, and you could do it randomized or you could do testing everybody. But what you want to establish at the beginning is pattern and flow. If you test everybody 4 times, the first one, you'll see a pattern. The second one, the pattern will just be off that first pattern. The third one will be another shape of the pattern, but the mean between all those patterns is where the disease is.
The only problem there, though, is given the porous nature of our country, our open borders, you can have the disease coming in every other day.
Yes, but see, what that says to me, right, is it only means that we have to strategize better. If we know that, let's make that part of our equation. And that may still mean that we have porous elements and it may still be difficult. But that's what our intellect is called upon to solve. In another country, in the United States, they're called upon to solve the problem of interstate travel. We are called upon to solve the ingress and egress of new people at risk of bringing the disease to us. That is what so in the world, we are supposed to be the experts on that. And when we sit down to analyze our situation, turn off the TV, forget about the CDC for the moment. We went to the same schools they went to. let's look at the situation and build the situation according to our understanding of the way our country functions. And if we did that, when we stand on a footing of our own and cultivate, as my mother would say, a sound backbone, we can speak to the world more effectively. And when the billionaire in Connecticut, the banker in North Carolina, the hotel developer in Florida, the residential developer in Arizona, the technological developer in Texas, the software developer in San Francisco, where the billionaire classes live, when they look around and say, I need to go someplace safe, they say those Bahamians, they're talking with a different kind of talk. They understand their environment. They're not repeating what we are saying here in America. They seem to have a handle on this. It's not perfect, but they have other things in their environment, like separate islands, like low population density. Have we done a risk analysis that factors that in the way we market ourselves? And then when we take all of that together, the technological platform that we create is not for itself. The technological platform is for us to advertise to the world that we are skilled at being ourselves, and therefore we are a safe place for you to come. And then that feeds our peg, prioritizes US dollar income, and puts us in the right economic trajectory.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you for being here today.
Pleasure.
We can go on and on, but
Pleasure.
I know that we're out of time. So
Pleasure.
thank you so very much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Morris.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and watching our program. Good evening, everyone.